All right, Janu. So, Janu, I am so happy to have you here today. And I'm going to do my silly little theme song while folks start joining us via social media world. It's Nosh and Schmooze, Nosh and Schmooze, where we talk about cool stuff concerning the Jews and everybody else. And welcome everybody to the very last installment of Nosh and Schmooze for now. Today we are here with Janu Mendel, Executive Director of Repair the World Miami, discussing how Repair the World creates opportunities for Tikkun Olam in our local community and around the country. And as always, if you have questions or comments for Janu, please leave them in the comments section and I will field your questions to him. But first, a bit about my guest. Janu was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, where he had his bar mitzvah in a sand-floored synagogue and developed his lifelong love of reggae music. He completed his Bachelor's of Science in Political Science in 2005 at the University of the West Indies. He immigrated to the United States in 2006, working in corporate business for 7 years. Seeking something more meaningful, he found his home in Miami's Jewish community and realized that this was where he belonged professionally. He was recruited as an outreach fellow for Temple Beth Am in 2013 and managed their young adult engagement efforts for 5 years. Concurrently, he spent 3 years on the staff as the director of engagement at the University of Miami Hillel. The opportunity to take a more active role in community building and civic engagement led him to his current role as founding executive director of Repair the World Miami. Janu is an alumnus of the Pardes Summer Program and Ben the Arc Selah Leadership Program for Jews of Color, as well as a member of the ROI community and a current Wexner Field Fellow. He serves on the national boards of the Jews of Color Initiative and Challah for Hunger. He currently lives in Miami, Florida, with his wife, Lexi, their dog, Bo, and their very newest addition, their daughter, Kaya. So first off, Mazel Tov on Kaya being welcomed into the world only 2 months ago. It's amazing. If you could just tell us, I think a lot of our viewers don't know, what is Repair the World?
Of course, thank you. So first, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Love that the opening theme song was live and not a recording. I think that just adds a little bit of something extra special. So Repair the World is a national organization that mobilizes Jews in their communities to take action to pursue a just world, right? So we hope to inspire a lifelong commitment to service. And we do that in a variety of different ways. So we run a few different programs or communities program, which is what I oversee here in Miami. We run a national program that is new this past year in light of the pandemic and the response needed. It's called Serve the Moment, that came up as part of a national Jewish service alliance that many Jewish organizations across the country came together to put together as far as engaging their organizations in service. And we provide opportunities for Jewish people in communities across the country to engage in direct service. So we have a fellowship program, which is similar to kind of these year-long AmeriCorps type programs. We're transitioning now to make it a 2-year program where folks typically, in the age range of being college graduates, commit to serving now for 2 years in a local community. And we, on our end, have spent a lot of intentional time building relationships with local nonprofits, usually in underserved neighborhoods, to ensure that we can add capacity and elevate their missions through volunteer service.
So if I was one of these folks that might be interested in something like this, and I'm local to the South Florida area, would I then just speak directly with Repair the World Miami and see what projects you have for me?
Totally. One of the great things is that our network here is so intentional, right? So Repair Miami launched in partnership and collaboration with the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, which is, kind of the convener for Jewish life here in Miami. And so we work very closely with the Jewish Volunteer Center, the JVC, Laura Tabachnikov is a name that is, pretty well known around here when it comes to volunteering. So at any age group or age range, if someone is interested in volunteering, through the Federation and, through Repair, we have some kind of opportunity that is possible. So if you are, any community member who wants to volunteer once a month, we can find an opportunity and an organization that is interesting to you and that you can, rest assured knowing that they are in need of volunteers and that the volunteer experience will be meaningful and necessary to helping that organization. If you are a recent college grad looking for an intensive full-time experience, maybe you want to apply for the Repair the World Fellowship. If you are still in college or maybe working part-time, or Serve the Moment program offers part-time stipended volunteering opportunities. So you can be part of a cohort for 10 weeks at a time, kind of following the school year schedule. So we have a cohort in the fall, a cohort in the spring, and you can be with a group of people. Otherwise, you can just show up whenever you're available and free to volunteer.
Amazing. And I know I've done that with my husband in the past with Repair the World Miami when y'all were just a baby, just starting out. And it was so incredibly fulfilling and meaningful. We were working with kids that were like between group homes and foster homes, and just being able to spend that time and brighten their lives a little bit in that moment was really sweet. And I'm curious, this is not a field that everybody gets into, and how was there a moment in your life or a person that inspired you to go in this direction with your career?
I mean, yes to all of the above, right? And for brevity, I know we have limited time together because that story, it could be an hour just by itself. So I think the main touch points to note are that when I was a high school senior in Jamaica, where I grew up, it became very apparent to me the inequities that existed. And at the time, I thought that the way I would personally pursue it was through politics, right? So in that moment, as a high school senior, told myself I was going to become the Prime Minister of Jamaica because it was just so upsetting to me to watch a cycle of corruption in our developing nation, which had so much potential to be wonderful and had so many incredible natural resources. So I was kind of like, if you want a job done right, you have to do it yourself. I'm going to be the Prime Minister so I can do some of these things. And, my life journey took me here to Miami. I moved to Miami at age 21, spent a number of years working in the corporate world, which it did not take me so long before I realized that it just was not serving me in a way that was good for my soul. And in a chance meeting with a local rabbi, Rabbi Judy Kempler, who's still based here in Miami, kind of set me on a new path in understanding what it was to reconnect to my Judaism. I was, that person who had a bar mitzvah and then just was not involved in Jewish life. In Jamaica also, there was no Jewish summer camp. There really wasn't a lot for me to plug into. And now I feel like there's so many amazing organizations engaging young Jewish adults. But when I first moved here in 2006, there weren't that many. It wasn't so much of a thing. So after that chance meeting and a few personal life journeys, my father had passed away that year, and it just caused me really to take some time to reflect and think about what was important in my life. And I knew I would not have gotten through the experience of my father's passing in the same way had it not been for our Jewish mourning ritual and being connected to the community. So at that point in life is where I kind of shifted my personal journey and my professional journey really to come back to Jewish life and started doing Jewish engagement work. And then it only took a few years before I heard Repair was looking to open a site in Miami. And here it was this opportunity for me to work in some kind of civic engagement and doing good in the world, and still through a Jewish lens. And as if it was meant to be, right? It seemed like the perfect opportunity for me. And I jumped at the chance and have not looked back since.
That's amazing. I love that story. And I'm sure your father would be really proud of what you're doing now. So, and in that vein, I'm wondering, is this something that you feel like this connection to being an agent of change? Is that something that you feel like you'll be able to instill in your daughter and get her involved in the community?
Absolutely. It's so funny you mentioned that, because she's only 2 months old now, and I'm spending so much time just taking care of her and keeping her alive, and it's just still so early, but I'm still finding myself imagining the kinds of conversations we'll have when she's older, when she's young, what values I want to impart onto her, what conversations we'll have when she's a teenager, and what kind of adult I hope she'll be. And when I think about the world that we live in, and all the inequity that exists, and the work that we do in such an intentional and meaningful way, I really can't wait to have the opportunity to teach her those lessons and to pass those things on to her. And it's just so special to me already to think about and imagine even before it happens.
Yeah, amazing. So all that being said, what are things that we can do now to get involved with Repair the World Miami?
So I love this question, right? Because there is kind of a somewhat famous Jewish question about, which is greater, learning or action. And the sages, so to speak, say learning is greater because learning leads to action, right? And you get both in the end. And repair or method really is, in terms of the entry point to the wider community, is to learn about something, right? Maybe to attend an event. Now we're doing everything, almost everything virtually, of course, during the pandemic, but, in times before, and hopefully in times after, we can gather in person again. And we work in close collaboration, not just to volunteer, but first to help people learn and feel inspired to want to do that in the first place. So we routinely host gatherings and events where people can learn about an issue, right, that's plaguing our communities, also on a very personal and local level about what's happening right in our own backyards. So I would really encourage people to find something of interest and just learn, log on, attend an event, and hear from our fellows and our volunteers and our partners and the people who are really leading the work. And then I think the next step is to choose something to show up to and to volunteer and to serve. And we reference that famous line from Pirkei Avot often about not being free to desist from the task of repairing the world. It's we can't do the whole thing ourselves, but we're not free to desist. So I encourage people to take time to learn about an issue, read, attend an event, and then come to serve.
That's great. And I just shared the link on Facebook for Repair the World Miami. And yeah, like what kinds of issues has Repair the World Miami specifically delved into since its founding?
So generally speaking, we really tend to focus on issues around education justice and food injustice. So we work with a lot of partners who maybe work in after school programs or programs with children to help close that educational gap. And we also work with a lot of urban gardens or organizations who are trying to provide, healthy, accessible food in places that are designated as food deserts. So, for those who might not know, food deserts are areas that don't have easy access to food, are a certain amount of miles away from their closest grocery store. And believe it or not, there are many places and neighborhoods in Miami that fall under that category. So, we do a lot of this outdoor urban gardening to, help elevate the work of those partners who are trying to feed their communities, and also doing this work, after school programs and so on to help close that education gap. So we don't limit ourselves only to those things. And a big part of, I think, what makes our model special is that we lean on our partners to tell us what the needs are. So we are, the capable hands, but we are not the ones who create the programming or decide what to focus on necessarily. We really rely on our partners who have been doing amazing work already before us for so many years to allow us to come in and be in partnership with them. So a lot of our work this year, for example, has been with criminal justice work and, just keeping up with what's actually happening in communities at the time.
And, I imagine that the issues that are facing Miami or South Florida vary from issues in other cities and communities across the country. Does the focus change from, each regional office of Repair the World?
It does. It definitely does, right? And I think it's, sad to say, so many issues can some way be connected back to either those broad umbrellas of education or food. But, here we have, I mentioned criminal justice, and that we have a really great partner that one of our fellows is working with, known as LEAP. And they, help with formerly incarcerated folks who are re-entering society. The pandemic has exacerbated so many of these issues, especially when it comes to food access. So we've been working with the Federation and with some of our community partners like Help in the Hood to do weekly and bi-weekly food distributions so the community can still come and have access to food. So yes, we leave room for variation based on what our particular communities need, because it is nuanced from city to city.
Obviously, you're having an impact on the community partner organizations and their participants that you're working with. Have you personally seen how this has impacted the Repair the World fellows or volunteers? Is there like a particular instance you can think of that sticks out?
So this is, for me, the beautiful thing about the kind of work that we do in Jewish communal engagement in general, right? Not unique to Repair, is that on the one hand, there are metrics and numbers we can report, but on the other hand, there's a narrative and these stories of meaningful journeys that individuals have, whether they are a volunteer or one of our fellows, and there are so many examples of that, right? So we have 2 fellows serving with us this year who chose to serve an extra year, because before it was a 1-year commitment. So I think that speaks volumes to kind of the experience they had and what they hoped to continue to do within the framework of the program. In Miami, right, we have had more than 50% of our fellows go on to either study programs in social work or go on to work with one of our service partners directly, either here in Miami or in another city. And nationally, that number remains very high of the percentage of fellows who go on to work in the field, so to speak, right? So we really believe, in addition to engaging, large numbers of volunteers to get involved, in the individual lives of a lot of our fellows, we're kind of changing the path of maybe what they thought they would be doing. And it's a career that they're setting up to do past the fellowship.
You're stealing a lot of future prime ministers from other countries. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
That's really cool. And then I'm also curious, if you've personally in a project have seen like your impact on a community member.
Yeah, so in a connection back to one of your earlier questions about things unique to Miami or things that might not necessarily be in those main 2 topics, I will never forget a story of a Shabbat dinner we hosted with some partners from Liberty City around gun violence, right? So it was not long after Parkland, and there was a lot of national attention being placed on, mass shootings and gun violence in general. And in our communities that we work in and in partnership with in Liberty City, there was less attention being placed. And I remember there was what kind of was a watershed moment in my own mind was a tweet from our school superintendent who, posted that there were 4 boys in Liberty City who were killed on a stoop overnight. And that, by the definition, qualified as a mass shooting, yet it didn't receive, the kind of widespread outrage or attention that it would just by proxy of where it happened, right? And as wonderful as, the marches and everything that was being highlighted around gun violence was happening out of Parkland, I felt it was important also to highlight, our community partners who were not being heard necessarily in the same way. So we hosted a Shabbat dinner, brought folks from the community, We heard from people in the community, and as part of the learning, we documented statistics of, gun violence right here in Miami, like not just on a national scale. And there were participants who left that night and came up to me before leaving and said, wow, I really had no idea that this was happening to this level 2 miles away from where I live, right? So we're talking about participants who live downtown Miami, in Brickland, and places, people who maybe had never even been to Liberty City before were hearing about something for the very first time because of a program and an intentional choice we made to highlight it. So, that just has sat with me always as a reason to elevate the voices of the unheard, right? Not ever to speak for anyone else, but to give platform to people who have every capability to speak for themselves.
Wow, that's really beautiful. It's just like speaks to the importance of organizations like Repair the World being, given the resources that you need, so that whenever things happen in the community and deserve that element of that platform, that you're there to give that to them. Yeah, so thank you for doing that. I also just want to share with everyone the link for Repair the World nationally. I'm curious, is Repair the World just in the United States at this point, or are there other places that there is a focus?
Right now, just in the United States, but expanding rapidly to many new cities, especially in light of the pandemic and our new Serve the Moment program. We have variations of our model now in many more cities.
So that being said, you grew up in Kingston. If Repair the World did exist where you grew up, is there something that you would want to bring to the table there, if you could?
I mean, that's a great question, right? I always wonder what an eventual homecoming might look like for me should it happen. And something that I heard colleagues of mine say when I first joined Repair, and something that I understand a lot more now because I am now saying the same thing, is that working with Repair the World has made me a better person, right? Like I engage in life in a much different way than I did before. And I really believe that in collaboration with all the other modes of social change that exist, service and volunteering is such a critical entry point for people to build community in places where it maybe didn't exist before, building bridges across lines of difference, and really taking the first step to act, which hopefully leads to a lifelong commitment to doing as much as possible to seek justice in our world. And so I think that culture of service is something that can and should be replicated anywhere it can be. And were I ever lucky enough to bring a program model like Repair back to Kingston, then I think we have a great model to replicate there in terms of engaging people, helping people learn and understand about issues, and then hopefully feeling compelled to act and serve.
I love that. And I hope at some point you do have the opportunity to do that if your path takes you that way. And I also think it's an interesting point that, Repair the World, I assume most of the fellows and the volunteers are coming from a Jewish background, but that most of the issues that they're focusing with and their partners in the community have, no Jewish identification. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is right. We do from time to time work with partners who need volunteers who do have some Jewish identification, but for the most part, they don't. So Jews exist in this country everywhere, right? In community with each other, but also in that. So as far as our mission goes, we want to engage the Jewish community as much as possible, but we're very purposeful in how we describe Jews and their communities, recognizing that not every Jew in America only engages with other Jews, right? So you don't have to be Jewish necessarily to volunteer with Repair the World. And certainly most of our partner organizations are not Jewish organizations. So as we try to find ways for Jewish people in America to connect to their Jewish identity, service and this idea of Tikkun Olam is a way that I think many people inside or outside of a Jewish context are seeking, right? Especially in the last few years, I think there has just been really a demonstrated uptick in the desire for folks to get involved in service or in service of their communities and being plugged into ways that feel meaningful to them. And so whether or not we're finding, Jewish people who gather together as part of a synagogue maybe versus a Jewish person who wants to come with, 5 of their friends who aren't Jewish to come together because that is a proud expression that they can showcase of what it means to be Jewish and learning and doing service through a Jewish lens, then, we find all of those things equally meaningful. So all our learning and one of the benchmarks of how we do our service is our service learning, right? It's always contextual and it's always rooted in Jewish values and Jewish text often. So it's, we'll never get around or away from that being really the basis of our organization and why we exist, but not uniquely.
And speaking about, Jewish text, we've been talking about this Jewish learning and how it's a component in Repair the World. We haven't actually defined what Tikkun Olam is. I know what it means to me, but how would you define Tikkun Olam?
I mean, the most common translation is in our organization's name, right? Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And, that's the inspiration for a name. And that idea of Tikkun Olam is, most famously listed in something I referenced earlier in this call, a famous line from Pirkei Avot, which says it's not incumbent upon us, to complete the work of repairing the world, but neither are we free to desist from it. And that line, I think, is central to how I approach the concept that the mountain is high, and it's scary to think that we need to scale it all on our own. But in collaboration with each other and taking turns, it is worth scaling always. And I, will never stop from doing my own part in scaling that mountain and hoping to inspire others to take a part on as well.
And I love that visualization of the mountain that we're climbing. And I think about, there are certain organizations that focus on like just social justice or just environmental practices. And what I love about Repair the World, other than like its element of learning and action, is that it's really a holistic approach in that these things are all, interwoven and they all affect each other. And so, urban gardens it's an environmental project, but it is impacting the local community in, financial ways and social justice and all of those things. So, yeah. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. There isn't just one way to do it, and there are so many other ways to bring about social change, right? So you have volunteering, which is what we do, but there's also people who maybe want to lobby on Capitol Hill and help, write legislation maybe, and or through philanthropy, and not one is better than the other, right? They all kind of work in an ecosystem towards social change. They're all equally necessary in their own way. And I think we've found that for folks who are just unsure of what path they want to take when it comes to what inspires them when it comes to social justice or social change, service really is one of the easiest entry points to learn about something, to see something firsthand, and then, hopefully be further inspired to go on to some of the others.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe you'll still be Prime Minister of Jamaica someday. You never know.
I've not written it off yet.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy new dad schedule. And we wish you the best of luck. I wish you lots of naps and continued success with Repair the World. And may these days be a blessing, all these moments.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being on. I appreciate the time, and wish you all the best as well.
Absolutely. And for folks watching on Facebook, thank you for joining us for Nosh and Schmooze. This is our very last installment for now. And you can find Repair the World. Also, I shared the link for their Instagram at Miami_repair is how you can follow them there and get more